Okay. So I'm on the wrong slide. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Lyons. I'm going to talk about successful soul classes. I want to thank JALT CUE for giving me this opportunity and for you for sticking around to the last presentation of the day for my turn. So first off, have any of you tried, or are any of you familiar with souls? Just give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with souls. No, I can't even see your reactions because I'm in presenter view. Please say yes if you are familiar with souls. Unmute your mics and say yes or no.
Yes, but only shallow. I have only shallow knowledge of them.
Oh, okay. And I guess none of you have tried souls in your class. So what I want to do today is to convince you that souls are really good for trying in your class. I mean, they're great for an everyday activity. They're wonderful. So I just want to try and convince you of that today. Quick overview of me. I'm Canadian and a long-term resident of Japan. I've been here about 33 years. I'm teaching part-time at universities in the Nagoya area while running my own English schools in Gifu-ken. My wife, who's Japanese, is also an English teacher. And we're both really against. We actively dislike teacher-centered education. And when our son was born in 2000, I started looking seriously at the extremes of alternative education approaches. And that's when I saw one of Sugata Mitra's early TED Talks. And I became very interested in what he called self-organized learning environments, or souls. I eventually tried it out, and well, it was so much fun, I've never really looked back. So here are a few of my pictures. Funny, that little box on the left shouldn't be there. But anyways, some of my sessions, there's a session at the university on the left, and a session from my private school at the top right, and an online session, which I did a couple months ago. My first experience of facilitating a soul was in 2015 at Meizhou University. I was teaching English. The computer room came open one day, and I thought, wow, I'll give it a try. So I asked the faculty staff were very positive about the idea. They said, go ahead. I invited my students in. They were really confused. But once it got, they were confused to be in a computer room for an English class. Once it got started, I had never seen my students so engaged. They were 100% into what they were doing. The session finished, and I could not get the kids to leave. They just wanted to stay and keep doing it. The lunch hour came. Some of the kids left, but a lot of the groups just kept on. I finally got the last kids out of the classroom 40 minutes after the lesson finished. That's something. These kids are just generally not that keen, but that day they were keen. So following that, I opened a dedicated soul class in my house in Gifu. At this time, I'm teaching a dedicated soul course at Nagoya Zoke University. It's in the Department of English, but I'm teaching souls every week. Again, say yes or no. Have any of you heard of the hole in the wall experiment?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you have? Okay, that's good. I'll just do a couple of slides about that then. It was 1999. Sugata Mitra was a physicist working in the high-tech industry in Delhi. His job was in a glitzy office building with air conditioning and high-speed internet, but outside the building there were slums. And Sugata Mitra decided to embed some computers into a kiosk in the walls outside. The kiosks were about the right height for children to use. Sugata Mitra put up some simple signs saying that the computers were free to play with. Local kids who were, not very literate, had never seen a computer before, had never even heard of the internet. They gathered around these funny new machines. They played with them, and they made little discoveries, trial and error. When they found out something new, they told their friends told their friends. They worked as a team. It was a community of practice. And in a very short time, many of these kids became computer literate. Now, they went from nothing to something pretty significant very quickly and without teachers. Sugata Mitra at first labeled this minimally invasive education. And then as a physicist, he recognized that the learning was characteristic of self-organizing systems. And the place where it happens, he called a self-organized learning environment. These were called the hole-in-the-wall experiments, and they have been replicated and developed in India and around the world again and again and again, countless times over. And there have been some astonishing results, but there has also been some backlash. Souls have had and still have detractors. There are a lot of educators around the world who find the notion of teacherless learning quite obnoxious. Obviously, I'm not one of them. I find the notion of teacherless learning absolutely inspirational. To my mind, souls fit in very nicely with modern educational theories, like those on the slide. Constructivist theory tells us that knowledge is constructed and not imparted. Inquiry-based learning encourages students to find their own answers. The advent of the internet gives students connectivism, shared cloud-based knowledge, and a virtually infinite library to research. And communities of practice reinforce social constructivist learning. All of these are mainstream to modern student-centered learning theory. And they're all elements of souls. And so I don't think any modern thinking educational professional should find souls to be obnoxious. I think they're completely mainstream. I just want to talk about a little research I did in 2019. I was going to do the research in 2019 and 2020, but things got in the way. So I only have 2019's research to show you. I did my research at Meizhou and Doho universities. There was an even mix of freshmen and fresh women. The total number of students was 116. I gave students soul activities. Well, I gave half the students soul activities and the other half reading comprehension activities. The following week, I switched it and gave the first group reading comprehension activities and the second group soul activities. The topics of the souls and the reading comprehension were the same. In the first week, it was the meaning of the Japanese word reiwa, which is the new era. And the second week, the topic was aeolian dust, what Japanese people call kosa. It's the dust that falls quite heavily in Japan in March and April. So I gave the students those topics to learn about in SOLs and reading comprehension activities. After that, the students were surveyed on their enjoyment of the activities. I think it goes without saying that there was really no competition. The students loved the SOLs and they did not enjoy the reading comprehension activities at all. Anyway, I analyzed the difficult vocabulary common to the SOLs and to the reading comprehension activities, difficult words that were used in both types of activities. And then I took that vocabulary and I turned it into 4 tests. I gave those tests at 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and 30 weeks after the activities were given. And the results, not particularly significant, actually. At 4 weeks after the activities were given, the students who did the reading comprehension activities were very slightly better in the vocabulary testing than the SOL students, very slightly, only 2%. At 8 weeks and 12 weeks, it had flipped, but it was still very minimal, just a 1% difference. The SOL students were slightly better than the reading students. And at 30 weeks, the SOL students were 6% better than the reading comprehension students. With that number of students, 116, I don't believe that 6% is a particularly significant difference. But it did lead me to at least one conclusion. Well, 3 conclusions here. First, students much preferred SOLs. They were happier doing that. And I think happiness counts for something. The students, well, secondly, more research is necessary. I would like to have done more in 2020. I think I'll get back to doing research in 2022. But for now, 2019 is the only research I have. And the third and most important conclusion I have is that at very least, SOLs are not detrimental to test taking. So again, it contradicts the naysayers. So I'm going to try and explain how to run a SOL session. First of all, SOLs themselves are free form, and as such, they're really not very welcome in institutionalized education. I think if I did just SOLs every week, it would be almost impossible to evaluate students, and I'd get in trouble with my administrators. So what I do is I embed the SOLs into English presentation class format, and that works just fine. So SOLs have a part 1, free form self-organized learning, and part 2 is English presentation, which I can evaluate. Here are some details on how I would run a session. First, you set up a room with some computers and other materials that students might need. In an online session, the material would probably be a shareable Google slide or PowerPoint slide. Next, you form groups of 3 to 5. In a classroom, students can change groups if they want. You know, it's okay to leave this group and go to another one. It's perfectly fine, and it really helps the atmosphere. But in an online class on Zoom, that is really difficult to arrange. And so online SOLs tend to have set groups from the beginning to the end. Next, you pose a big question to the students. Now, what is a big question? I'll just take a break from this series of how to run a soul session slides, and I will talk about big questions for a moment. All right, a good big question should be open-ended, challenging, relevant in both a personal and a communal sense, balance between abstraction and personal, accessible to everyone, short. I mean, the question should be short. The answer has to be long. It has to be leading. It needs to lead to long answers. It needs to be inspiring. It should encourage deep conversation and deep learning. It really should connect with more than one subject area. It's good to have a question that challenges the students' understanding of math, philosophy, and art. You know, all of them at once makes it for a good question. And it should promote various learning methods to solve. Now, to get all of these points into a single question is impossible. However, take 2 or 3 of these and you've got a good big question. Generally speaking, a big question should be hard and interesting. I'll go back to the main series of slides. Okay, pose a big question to the students. For example, how does a flock of birds fly and move together? Why do some Catalonians want independence from Spain? Are world university rankings realistic? How do herb teas affect our health? Okay. After you pose the big question, you allow the students to self-organize and to answer the question as they see fit. For some reason, this is hard to read. It should have been in bright yellow. Anyway, this is the hard part. Allowing the students to self-organize is the hard part. Sugata Mitra pointed out that learning happens at the edge of chaos. But we teachers really don't like to see chaos. I bite my lip and allow it when it happens in a soul class. And in all honesty, I have done hundreds of souls over the last few years, and I have hardly ever seen students significantly off task. I suggest this is due to the intrinsic motivation of student-centered learning and being a part of a community of practice. But anyway, it really is hard for a teacher to sit there when the class seems too noisy and the kids don't seem to be on task. But more often than not, they really are. After that's finished, after the soul is finished, we head into the more traditional English presentation class structure where the students present their findings using PowerPoint or whatever they want to use. And that's followed by feedback and sometimes evaluation. The timing for this is sort of like this. It depends on many factors, how many students are there, what their level is, how much English assistance they need for their particular presentations, whether they need English coaching or not, whether they're good at peer feedback. There are many factors. I'm going to, well, the example that I have on screen is indicative of what I'm doing at Nagoya Zoke University right now. That's a small class, 5 to 8 students, and they are mostly pretty experienced in souls. Their English level is about 450 to 500 in TOEIC. They're not terrible, not great, and they're fairly keen. So I will give them generally 5 minutes greetings and introduction to the big question, then a 60-minute soul, and the last 25 minutes would be presentation and feedback. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for sitting through my ramblings. Oh, I am now going to post some links and citations in the chat. So if you want some more follow-up links, including some good videos on how to go about it and some peer-reviewed articles on souls, feel free to check that out. I could go from here to the lounge, but it's not necessary because this is the last presentation for the afternoon. So we can just sit here and I'm happy to answer your questions. Before your question, just let me quickly throw that link into chat because that's probably more useful than anything that I'm going to say. Okay, because I'd love to answer your question while doing this, Henry, but I'm actually not good at chewing gum and walking at the same time.
No problem.
Oh, that wouldn't work because, okay, there's the link. So you can click on that if you like. And now I'm happy to answer any questions until you guys are skipping.
So I was just going to ask, when you do the soul sessions, you're posing one big question for all the groups, or does each group have a different question?
Generally speaking, I just choose one big question for a single session. But for example, in that very first one I did in 2015, I gave the students a choice of 4 big questions, and that worked fine too. I have no set answer for you. Both are fine. You can give them choices. It's just a little bit difficult to come up with good big questions. Takes a bit of thinking.
And I think I had one more question. So do you ask them or encourage them to interact in English, or you just require them to present in English, or what is the language aspect?
Good question. The English presentation portion of a session, of course, is English. The soul session, by definition, has to be self-organized. If I mess with the self-organization in any way, it won't work. So, as I said, I have to embrace that chaos. They're speaking Japanese, so be it. Sometimes they speak in English. For the most part, they do their research using Japanese websites. Sometimes they use English ones. It's up to them.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I got a message that I need permission to access that Google Drives folder.
Oh, why? Thank you for
I just sent a screenshot of what I saw, but it says you need access. Yeah.
Okay. See if I can just give me like 30 seconds to access my Google Drive. And get that file. If I reach 30 seconds yet, this might go to 40 seconds.
Okay.
Just share this again. Get link. Change to anyone with a link.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody with the link can.
Anyone with a link can view.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's now copied. So could you try that and tell me if it works?
Yep. Hang on. Bingo. Yes.
Yay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So my question is, could you describe, like, when you initially introduce this to students, do you do like a training day where you kind of walk them through the various, how do you go about setting it up the first time around?
Yeah, from the first time I did it with, the first time I did it, and the first time at the beginning of this present school year with the Nagoya Zoke students who had zero experience. I guess I gave them about a 20-minute spoken introduction. And then I said, let's get our feet wet. I usually started out by saying, I'm going to give you an activity that gives you complete autonomy. This is your activity. This is something that you can do the way that you want to. There are no rules, not until you get to the presentation portion. And so you're really going to enjoy this and you're going to learn on your own terms. Once they hear that, students tend to get quite excited.
It reminds me a lot of the open space technology for conferences.
Yeah.
It's in that same, so it really has me excited. So anyway, I'm glad I
Would you like to
showed
give
up.
it a try in your classes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, please do. Please do. And let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll do that. Sure.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? No, there are only the three of you here. Where are you teaching, Stephen?
I retired just as the pandemic was hitting.
Oh, yeah.
So then